insight. Actually, you went well beyond my expectation. I wanted to ask you some help to convince my members, but I think your words were very clear of the challenge that we have in front of us and the opportunity cost that we have if we don't take action. We try to be proactive, and well, today officially we conclude the first Horizon 2020 EMAP, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the partners that have really supported us, RICS, the Global Green Council, the two universities, Venice and Frankfurt, and E.ON, for the support that they have done for the future of the mortgage industry. It was very difficult to speak the same language, Mario. We were speaking different languages. We were not understanding what we were doing and what were the problems of the different corners of the industry. We achieved an important result, which is a common definition of what is an energy efficiency mortgage, which is a market benchmark for moving forward. We have also put together 45 pioneer banks that have decided to accept the challenge to try to do it together. Now, what we are doing is very difficult, and the first bottleneck is data, as you correctly said. We have a second Horizon 2020, EDAP, that is trying to put together an energy efficiency template for data. Of course, we are looking at what you are doing on STS. We are looking at what ESMA is doing. And now we have the EDAP initiative trying to work together to give an industry standard. The problem is, what kind of data we need? What are the relevant data that we have to ask? And we would like to understand what are the needs from a regulatory side, what is feasible for the market, and try to put our initiative in between. That's the purpose. Maybe just, this is what we have done so far. I think that understanding what is in the pipeline from every single institution could help our banks to get institutional support. Because the people in this room, they believe in the project 100%. They work on their weekends and their nights on our initiative, and we thank them for this. But the problem is that they don't have the full support of the hierarchy in their institution. Now it's pretty clear the message is coming from the European Commission, and hope the same thing from London, Paris. I don't know how to place you. And no, London is EBRD, sorry. But maybe, I don't know if we can start with Ursula, because from the technical expert group, if you can give us some insight of what is about to arrive for the industry. I know that taxonomy we cannot mention, as Mario said, but can you tell us what is about to arrive?
Yes, thank you, Luca. One thing that I can say is that this is not going away. This is definitely going to happen. For years, in terms of buildings, we have been deliberating what constitutes green, and there's been no real answer. One important step that I see is really the EMI, because at least for the mortgage sector, we now do have a definition, and I think that's very important because that creates market security. People can actually then orientate themselves. That's not to say that definitions are cast in stone. They are dynamic and they have to be flexible and adaptable. And I think that at the taxonomy level is exactly what we're also trying to achieve. And it is challenging because there are very, very many different views of what constitutes green, depending on the stakeholder groups, depending on geographical background. So the discussions they are not easy. But one thing that I can say is that by the 30th of June, we will definitely have something on the table, and then it's up to the Council and the Parliament to decide whether this is whether this needs to be more ambitious, or whether it can stay, or whether it needs to be pared down a little bit. But for the building sector, we don't want to create yet another scheme. That is definitely not our intention. We want to build it on tools and instruments that are already being used or that form part of the legislative process within Europe, but also, of course, Mario already said it, we want to make sure that this would also work at an international level. Yeah, so I can say watch this space, but I mean, I really need to stress that this is going to happen, and it needs to happen because we do need to channel more targeted finance to sectoral activities that merit this kind of finance, and that will actually will bring benefits to our emissions tally, because we need to reduce those emissions even if we are not the big emitters in the world.
Thank you, Ursula. I would be curious to understand the mandate exactly that that the European Commission has provided to the European Banking Authority. I mean, what kind of should we expect some kind of disclosure requirements, or should we expect a set of incentive? What will be arriving soon to the market?
Thank you very much also for the great speech, which already explained a lot about what is our starting point at the EBA. Our work is closely related to what's in the action plan, and of course specific mandates are all coming in the new CRR, CRD review package. We also participate on the technical expert group. Myself, I'm involved directly with the definition of green bond standard, which is a very exciting work, also very relevant for all of you here. With all of this, in the regulatory space and supervisory space, we are approaching this from a prudential perspective angle. Of course, we don't have political agenda. We have the mandate to be sure that this is correctly understood. Sustainability and risk related to this is correctly understood by banks, and that they can translate this understanding into risk management and business decisions to go to the right direction. So more specifically, our mandates are in all three pillars of prudential regulation. So Pillar 3, Pillar 2, and Pillar 1. And why I'm starting from Pillar 3, even if we traditionally start from Pillar 1, is because we see Pillar 3, as it was already mentioned, as very important element when it comes to sustainability agenda, as we cannot regulate your business decision as banks, but we can make you to disclose and compare, let's say, the shades of your balance sheets or colors of your balance sheet to make the right decision and to show market participants exactly your portfolios. So this is top priority for us to continue on the work done by the Task Force on Financial Disclosure, now non-binding guidelines issued by Commission on non-financial disclosures, which are implementing the technical expert group recommendations. So we will continue and look at how this could be more specifically translated into a disclosure for banks. And we had an excellent workshop a couple of weeks ago at Brussels together with EBF, where we already discussed few ideas, and one of the takeaway from the workshop was that banks agreed with supervisors that we cannot wait until the taxonomy is completed and is perfectly defined, because that would take us too long time, that we need some more basic and simple metrics to introduce sooner rather than later, and to be able to go and disclose, even if it's rough numbers and qualitative information, but move as fast as we can. So in this space, we are looking on how to translate this into a publication for the sector. I cannot tell you when exactly that will be, but we are thinking end of this year, start of next year, to give you more clarity with more publication on disclosure, which would be kind of a middle step into between the final mandate, which we then have in the CRR. And as well, we are looking on the Pillar 2, which has kind of component when it comes to risk management, and which has component when it comes to supervision. On the side of risk management, again, these more simple metrics, which we are thinking how to define them, also together with industry, could help you to take right decisions now or to go to the right directions, because the objective here is not to have perfect measurements of PD and LGDs in 10 years. The issue is to give you approximate understanding of your risk profile from sustainability perspective and take decisions now how to avoid impact on your PDs and LGDs 10 years from now. So we have slightly different objectives here. So that's where we also will be looking on how this more common metrics could be used to be translated into the risk management governance and then supervisory policies. So that's the pillar 2. And then only after that we see as priority number 3 to look on the mandate in pillar 1. Which is prudential treatment of assets from sustainability perspective. So, or sometimes it's called green supporting factor. So for this, of course, we understand, as Mario explained, that when you have a better house, you pay less for energy, so you are less likely to default. This is all clear, but to prove that there is enough evidence for different prudential treatment. This will, of course, take some time, and as it was said by other speakers, and it takes a lot of good data. So that's where we come to the point of initiative as energy-efficient mortgages. It's really also on you to contribute to this process with building this database, which will then help us to really have basis and common understanding of how is performance of different type of mortgages or other types of assets incorporating sustainability risk factors into that. So also from my perspective, speaking, representing the EBA here today, we very much welcome this initiative. And then additional mandate we got directly from the action plan is going straight into the governance. And on that, we will be already delivering this year. So we receive a call for advice from European Commission to look on what's called Action 10 in Action Plan, which is advice on short-termism, long-termism. So if there is undue pressure on corporates from markets, which then is causing short-term decisions rather than long-term perspective. So we are intensively working on this and also approached the industry with the specific questions on the topic recently. And as one of the outcomes from this work, we are expected to formulate potential recommendation to Commission how regulation might need to be adjusted in those areas which would support more long-term thinking of banks in this situation. So this is where we are. And just the last point, because I might be asked to mention that, is that we are also participating on the work of Network of Greening Financial System, which just recently had a big conference and published their first report. And we would very much like to build on the work already done by supervisory community there. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A couple of reactions. It's 5 years that we are going around Europe trying to dig data wherever is possible. And I have to say, it's not only challenging, but sometimes we get a bit depressed because, I mean, the quality of data is very difficult to compare countries' situation. I mean, even the mortgage market are still very different, and also the climate conditions are very different. So on one hand, I really believe that data are extremely important, but I think at a certain point we should build an anno zero and starting from something fresh and new and a common standard, because otherwise there is a risk to compare peers and apples into the market. This is the idea of a pilot phase, so asking the banks to start all together to collect data. And to be very realistic, we cannot promise you to give you an historic data series for the last 20 years. It will be a new, fresh data. So we believe that also the data research should be a joint effort from all the institutions. Because banks, they have to accept the challenge to review their IT, which is a major cost for banks, impacting banks in different ways. Big national champions and small Sparkassen, I don't know in which valley of Austria, will have a different cost for this. And we need to give one template common to everyone. So my invitation is to the European Banking Authority. We are working with EDAP to build an industry template. Please, let's do it together. We are very advanced in the project. We have a first draft. This will be commented at the end of May in Varignana. CRIF invited us to be there. It's a wonderful excuse to go to Bologna. The invitation is really, please, regulators, come and speak to us, because we will ask exactly to the banks what is feasible and what is not feasible. But let's do it one template at the European level. Let's not double costs for the industry. So we are all ready to cooperate as much as we can. And then I would like to move after the EBA introduction, what kind of incentive we can give to the banks accepting this challenge. Because, as Mario said, it's a question of money. It's a question of money for the consumer, who would have to have a gain in their investment, but it's also a question of profitability for the banking sector. Maybe can I move to the EBRD? I mean, you are doing a lot of activities, helping in funding solutions. What is in the pipeline of the EBRD?
So maybe just quickly to explain the role of EBRD in green finance, because we are coming from different angles. So we are basically the first multilateral bank that has in its mandate a specific requirement to support environmental sound and sustainable funding. Over the last 10 years, we invested more than 12 billion in green sustainable projects across our countries of operations. In most of the countries, we are the largest investor in sustainable finance. And we are looking from different angles. So first of all, we are an investor of green, we are an issuer of green bonds. We are one of the first IFIs that started to issue green bonds in 2010. And since then, we basically issued more than 80 green bond issuance in close to 4 billion euro. We are also an investor in green bonds. So we invested recently, last year, in the largest emerging market green bond fund alongside Amundi and IFC, which was 1.4 billion US dollars fund dedicated to emerging markets, investments in green bonds. We invested about $70 million, supporting also the junior tranche. And also we have an active role on the policy side. And here we are looking on the standard side. The bank, it's a different team in the bank. It's a member of the Green Bond Executive Committee, and we basically have an interest to support the green bond principles. We are also participating in the technical expert group on sustainable finance established on the European Commission. My role is mostly on the investment side. I'm responsible, among other things, on investing in green bonds by issuers of our countries of operation. And I'm going to explain a little bit the role that the bank is playing in this regard. So last year, we put together a framework of 250 million euro to be deployed in green bonds issued by banks in our countries of operation. EBRD has a strong relationship with banks across the region. So far, we cooperated with more than 130 clients in more than 4 billion loans dedicated to sustainable finance. This is basically it's a term in EBRD called GET, which is Green Economy Transition, which includes environmental sound and sustainable standards. It's quite broad, but basically we developed this relationship with the clients, and we've been very, very successfully. So building on this asset base, that it's quite large there, we put together this framework that we'd like to use to support banks to issue green bonds. And why green bonds? I mean, developing capital market is another important pillar and strategy of EBRD. So we are trying to mobilize also private sector investors. So far, most of these lines that we've been given to the banks have been it's basically a loan basis, so no private sector participation. Through the bond framework, we are trying to mobilize private investors, because we believe it's very important for the development of the capital market, and also creating a sustainable source of funding for these institutions. So EBRD role in this, we can take up to 20% of these issuances if they are public issuances. They can be also initially in a private placement format, where we have appetite to take more, especially for the issuers coming from less developed market, where there is no appetite from the from the private investors. But the idea is to basically mobilize private capital to support these issuances. Now, there have not been any green bonds out of EBRD region from the private sector side. I mean, on the FI side, on the corporate, there have been a few. So it's the challenge we found. It's working with the banks and identifying the eligible projects. Of course, the definition of what green is very important. I think that the common definition on green mortgages definitely would help, especially for the green cover bonds that we expect to see. But working through with the banks and identifying which are the eligible assets, how are they be evaluated, and more important is what is the impact on these assets. So how do we calculate what's the impact on of the sustainable assets? So this is the challenges that we are facing at the moment. In order to support that, we put together a technical assistance program. So part of this 250 million euro, we have also some TC money. And this money are aimed to work with the issuer, potential issuer on preparing the green assets, on the reporting side, the IT systems, if they need, with the aim to issue green bonds.
Thank you, Andreea. Well, so we see that it is possible to have a funding, I would say, support, which is extremely important for all our issuers. I have to say also the EIB is very active in our advisory council, proposing ideas. A few minutes ago, EIB and our banks had a meeting to discuss about potential solutions, so we are already active. But our initiative was created with a global aspiration. We discuss our initiative with our global partners, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, the Brazilians, the Canadians. And in the advisory council of the Energy Efficiency Initiative, we have IFC and the World Bank, because the idea is very simple. If it's working in Europe, let's copy and paste the model and the incentive that we can create around the globe. What is happening outside of Europe for us is extremely important. Shoichiro, I don't know if you can tell us, I mean, you're doing energy efficiency mortgages since 20 years or something like this.
Yes, 15 years. But let me explain some situation of sustainable finance in Japan. Right after 2015, when SDGs were adopted by UN member states, in 2016, Japanese government established the SDGs implementation guiding principle. And then 2017 was the turning point for Japan. Japan Business Foundation, which is a comprehensive economic organization, released SDGs entities acting principle. I think that's the very important phrase, because the principle was private entities principle. And then in same 2017, Japanese government pension investment fund announced they would invest some 8 billion euro equivalent to the SDGs shares. And also in 2017, Ministry of Environment released green bond guidelines based on the ICMA's GBP. And then actually, based on that guideline, we issued the first green bond in Japan last January. And then in terms of sustainable finance, we reduced the interest rates of the mortgages, as you do here in Europe, for the good quality houses, which satisfies one of the 4 policy-related housing performances that are first, energy efficiency, and second, earthquake resilience, and thirdly, comfortability for the elderly people, and fourth, durability and flexibility. And then to secure the housing quality, more than 10% of our agency member staff are architects and engineers, even though we are the financial institutions. That's the situation.
Well, this is very interesting because we discussed with few countries putting together the energy efficiency with anti-seismic solution. In Italy, where we have a national hub very active, this is a problem of social desertification. So the combination of these two elements for some European regions can be extremely important. I'm very conscious of time, and we have another panel on our initiative. So I would like to conclude by saying something. I think that we cannot wait for Godot, in the sense that the daughter of Mario Nava will become older, and we cannot wait forever. And sometimes I have the feeling that waiting for the perfection and the data is not the solution that we have in front of us. I can see the willingness of the banks and most of the people in this room to do something. We need to give instruction to them. I feel the responsibility to give a sign where to go. And I think there are some shortcuts that we can have. For example, we have been discussing with few countries. This discussion about the green supporting factor for me can last forever, and everyone is right, everyone is wrong for me. I mean, let's just take action. Let's ask 4 countries to put a public guarantee on condominiums, which is the real part, or the first home buyers. I mean, this can help to get life into the market and to move forward. And then if we move all these banks in the same pilot phase, in 5 years' time, you will start to have some data. 5 years is not enough. We all know this. But it means it's a starting point. It's better than nothing. And I think that we have to be humble in the expectation. We have to manage expectation. We have to tell to the European authorities that what we are trying to do is very difficult. Also because we need a systemic approach. Mario Nava is full convinced, Slavka is full convinced. The problem is that we have to convince the City Hall of Rome, we have to convince the City Hall of Murcia, of Oslo, that what we are doing should be done all together as a European market. So the messages that we collected today are an important sign for you to go back to your bosses, to go back to your city halls, and give this message. We want to try to do something in Europe all together. We are not uniform, our markets are different, but we can be united. And can we really produce, we have the same problems, let's find the same solutions. Adaptable, of course, to your own market. I would like to conclude with this, and I would like to thank all of you for your important words. I mean, your messages today, hope from EBRD, I mean, hard work from EBA, let's do it, Mario Nava, and Shoichiro, let's do it global. And Ursula, it's arriving, be careful. and you cannot avoid it. I mean, it's something that it will hit you. It's, I think, the right scene to pass the ball to Jennifer and to the Commission, and Camilla, you will take the floor, and to see what we are doing. Because they are saying, guys, this is the right way, let's do it all together. Now we want to show what we are doing in the next 2 panels. So I would like just to invite you to thank my panelists. Thank you very much for your participation.